Tynan, it's a great pleasure having you. Really appreciate you taking the time. Everybody in the audience here wants to know, why did you choose Sales for Life for social selling training?
Yeah, good. Well, Jamie, thanks first of all for having me as part of this. It's a great question. And maybe if I can, I'll just take a step back right to the beginning and kind of talk about what led up to our choice for Sales for Life to do our social selling. So social selling, we actually started about 2.5 years ago with a pilot program using LinkedIn. And during that pilot program, we ran about 10, 15 salespeople through it, trained them up on how to use LinkedIn and how to incorporate it into their day. And kind of during that process of training those people, we went through customizing their profiles and getting them used to using LinkedIn on a daily basis. After we went through that pilot, we then went ahead and launched it full-blown to all of our salespeople and gave them the premium LinkedIn accounts. So as we introduced that to people, as we customized their profiles and that sort of stuff, over time it became apparent that what we were doing wasn't having as great an impact as we would like. And some of the things that we ran into was that while marketing was creating content for them and providing that content to our sales reps, the sales reps were having a little bit of a tough time engaging with the content, how to distribute the content, and how to interact with the content that they send with their clients. So that went on. We kind of fumbled around for that for probably better part of a year. And then the beginning of this year, I had actually read an article by Jill Rowley about her experience with Oracle in using the Sales for Life content to help with their internal training, which then prompted me to reach out to you and to Sales for Life to find out, could we incorporate that into our training program. And really what we were hoping, and ended up being much more than we expected, but what we were really hoping for was, how do we train our salespeople to understand how to engage with content, and then how to use that in a one-to-one lead nurturing process, and then also how to change themselves from being more resume-centric on LinkedIn to more buyer-centric. And so it was really important that we find a training company that would help us with that, and the Sales for Life curriculum was a perfect fit, and we evaluated a lot of other companies as well too before we made the decision. Reputable companies like Huthwaite, and InsideSales.com and several others, and found that the content from Sales for Life was just much more robust and much more in line with what we were trying to accomplish.
It's interesting that you found our organization through content marketing, and we constantly teach sales professionals that while you're sharing content, and you might not feel that this content will drive you immediate return on investment, by putting it out there, by being an advisor, or always being there as a resource, it can come full circle maybe 3, 6, 9, 12 months later. I really appreciate this, Tynan. Now, perhaps you can expand on this and talk a little bit about the impact this had on your business after you'd completed the training.
Sure, yeah. So and we're still in our evolution, or in our process. And I would say the first thing is, I would say that it's a journey, it's not a destination. And much like social tools in general that evolve over time, social selling, I think, and how our salespeople interact with our content will evolve over time. So, but first and foremost is, it really helped our reps understand how to engage with content. Because what happens after you put a tweet out there, or after you put a LinkedIn message out there, or you send an email? What happens next? And our reps were really floundering with that. They really struggled with understanding, how am I even using this as part of the sales process? So the very first key takeaway is that became very clear for them. It became very clear about how they use content to engage in the selling process. How do they use that to take somebody that they don't know anything about and connect with them, build that relationship, and then after they build that relationship, hopefully align with their buying cycle, so that through their content sharing and the stuff that they're putting out there, that they will then be entered into the selling, or into the buyer's cycle, and hopefully eventually lead to a sale. So that was the first thing that was a takeaway. The next was really having a better understanding of what social selling was in general. And I know there's, at some point, I'm sure it won't be called social selling anymore. It'll just be sales, right? And it'll be the way that people sell.
100%.
But for us, it was really important to just get them to understand what it meant. And then more importantly, what it means and how does it fit into their normal selling process that they've been doing for the last 30 plus years. Because we have a very long history, a very formal sales process. And social selling, we were able to adopt that into our current selling process seamlessly so that it just became part of what they do. The other part is that, from January to June of this year, we managed to generate $1.7 million in opportunities, which is a decent return for us. And we typically close about 58% of our opportunities. So that's somewhere around $900 to $1 million in sales between January and June that we can say had something to do with our social selling efforts as well as so.
It's funny. We should have done for this exercise a cost per student and a return on investment per student, and perhaps when I package this video up together, I'll put those together. But I think that's an important metric. Is that, and you're one of the world's largest training companies to boot. I mean, this is the important piece, and your company has been a mentor to our business of learning training best practices. But the importance of education to the sales professional. I know that there are a lot of companies out there that are a little bit hesitant or nervous to invest hundreds of dollars, or sometimes in your case, training could be thousands of dollars per student. Yet, it's clear that the money in will get you 5-10-fold back if done properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and it's really important because, you can't assume that people know how to do stuff. And to be honest, along this journey for the last 2.5 years, I've made some assumptions. And those assumptions have come back to bite me. And the very first assumption I made is that everybody would welcome premium LinkedIn accounts with open arms, right? But when I started talking to them about, hey, I need your profile to look a certain way, they got very defensive, and they were very clear to say, this is my profile. You can't dictate what I do. Meanwhile, all I was trying to do was help them understand that their resume was not set up in a way that was welcoming to buyers, and that they needed to change that. And so that was a silly assumption on my part that everyone would just say, oh, that's great, thank you so much. They were like, great, so now you're going to tell me what to do. And that was something that I hadn't expected. So I think as part of that training process, you can't assume that your reps are going to know what to do with it. There are some people that are, die-in-the-wool type people who just aren't accepting of change, and they need to see a clear plan, and they need to see the results from that before that they're willing to come on board. And by running through this training process, we were able to demonstrate some of those things. So even my most hardened and jaded people were willing to make the switch.
This is fantastic. I greatly appreciate your time, Tynan, and you're becoming an evangelist. You spoke at the LinkedIn Sales Connect conference. You're becoming an evangelist for social selling. There were 500 people in that conference this year. I'm certain there'll be 5,000 people in the next couple of years. Yeah. Again, Tynan, thank you so much, and look forward to continuing the relationship.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.